Good evening. Welcome to the Design Review Board meeting of June 27th, 2024. This meeting is now called to order. Please silence all cell phones at this time. The DRB meeting is being broadcast live on Glendale TV, viewable on Spectrum Cable Channel 6 and AT&T UVerse Channel 99. Meetings are also streamed live in high definition on the city's webpage, glendaleca.gov/watchlive, on youtube.com/myglendale, and on Apple TV, Roku, and Amazon Fire devices using a free app called ScreenWeave and choosing Glendale TV from the menu. Meetings are also archived on the city's website for viewing anytime at glendaleca.gov/agendas. For public comments and questions during the meeting, please call 818-937-8100. City staff will be submitting the questions and comments in real time to the appropriate person. Current DRB agendas and staff reports are available by visiting our website at www.glendaleca.gov. Records of decisions for all projects will be posted online on the Planning Division website. Please note that any appeal of a case heard today must be filed within 15 calendar days of the DRB decision date. The appeal application is available online, www.glendaleca.gov/permits. We'll start with roll call. Board Member Lockhart.
Present.
Board Member Kaskanian.
Present.
Board Member Simonian, absent. Board Member Chagayan.
Present.
Board Member Welch.
Present.
Okay, thank you. Reports regarding posting of the agenda. The agenda for the June 27th, 2024 regular meeting of the Glendale Design Review Board was posted on the city's website on Thursday, June 20th, 2024, and on the bulletin board outside City Hall on Monday, June 24th, 2024. Next item is approval of minutes. I believe there's 4 on the agenda.
That's correct.
Okay,
Yes.
and I think we could do it with one motion if,
Can someone please make a motion?
Can I just make a motion to approve all 4, but even though it's like,
actually, sorry, no, we can't do it. We have to do
Yeah.
the first one,
So May 9th,
May 9th.
can we have a motion for
a
May 9th?
motion to approve the minutes from our May 9th meeting?
Okay. And then.
Do we have a second?
Second?
I second, assuming I was here. I'm going to check it.
And then the other ones,
And then April 11th.
April 11th.
And do we have a motion for April 11th? Okay.
I move we adopt the minutes from April 11th.
I'll second.
Great.
And then February 22nd.
Okay,
Do we have a motion?
Motion to approve the minutes from February 22nd?
okay, and a second?
Yeah,
I'll second.
Okay, and then June 13th,
correct.
do we have a motion for that one as well?
Motion to approve the June 13th.
Second.
Great, thank you.
Thank you.
Oral communication. Discussion is limited to items not a part of this agenda. Each speaker is limited to 5 minutes. The Design Review Board may question or respond to the speaker, but there will be no debate or decision. I don't have any speaker cards, and I don't believe you do either. Just 1 second. Board commission member comments?
No, not at this time.
Okay. And then just 1 moment, okay. Just 1 moment. I just want to make sure we're connected to the Comrex real quick. Okay, great, thank you. All right, so there's no old business on the agenda. There's just one item under new business, and that's 901 through 901 South Brand Boulevard. I'm ready to present.
Yeah, we're great. Please proceed. Thank you.
Okay. All right, good evening and thank you. This application is for the expansion to the existing Pacific BMW dealership located at 901 through 919 South Brand Boulevard. The site is irregularly shaped and consists of 6 lots totaling approximately 81,000 square feet in the commercial auto zone and has frontage on 3 streets: South Brand Boulevard, West Acacia Avenue, and West Garfield Avenue. The project is proposing to construct a new 5-story, approximately 171,000 square foot above-ground parking structure with rooftop parking. It will feature 450 parking stalls and is intended primarily for vehicle inventory. The project involves the demolition of the existing surface parking lot and an existing accessory building, as well as removal of some solar panel structures that will eventually be relocated to the roof of the new parking structure. As it relates to CEQA, a revised initial study was prepared for the project and circulated for comments from May 22nd, 2024 to June 11th, 2024. No comments were received, and the final MND is attached for review with the staff report. The board will be required to consider and adopt the final MND prior to approval of the design review application tonight. There are 3 buildings on the project site: a 1-story, approximately 18,000 square foot building originally constructed in 1924 and addressed as 901 South Brand, and that's this corner building here. A 1-story, 9,192 square foot building originally constructed in 1964 and expanded in 81. That's addressed as 915 South Brand Boulevard, and that is towards the rear of the lot. There's also a 561 square foot accessory building that's located centrally kind of on the parking lot site. That was relocated to the site in 1964. It's addressed as 919 South Brand and is proposed for demolition. There's also an existing canopy structure off the Garfield Avenue portion of the property that will also be demolished as part of the project. With the exception of the corner building at 901 South Brand, the other existing buildings are not considered historic resources. This is the corner building. It was identified in the 2019 South Glendale Community Historic Resource Survey as individually eligible for local listing. It will be maintained as is, and as detailed in the final MND, will remain eligible for listing in the Glendale Register of Historic Resources if the project is built as proposed. This is the proposed site plan for the project. The area of the new parking structure is highlighted in yellow. The existing driveway apron along this portion of Brand, it will be maintained and continue to serve as the primary vehicular access point. There's also driveways located off Garfield as well as Acacia that will continue to serve as secondary access points similar to today. The site planning for the project is comparable to other vehicle inventory parking structure developments in the area, and the structure is located in the same location as the existing surface parking lot that is currently used for vehicle inventory as well. There are landscape planters located adjacent to the sidewalk along Brand. One condition of approval staff is recommending is that planting details be provided to us for review and that all the new landscaping be drought tolerant. This slide illustrates the floor plan layouts for the vehicle inventory parking structure. The design's mass scale is typical of a parking structure and consistent with other vehicle dealerships in the immediate vicinity. As it relates to historic resources, the immediate context includes the corner building at 901 South Brand that will be maintained, as well as the Beckon Storage Building, which is located south of the site. It is not part of the project site, and there is another lot that separates the two. However, that is the surrounding context. The project's been designed to complement these buildings, and it integrates well with the surrounding building fabric. The northeast corner of the garage next to the historic corner building features a notch in the design's rectangular volume with an open stairwell and glass railing. This helps create a visual break between the old and new. It also relieves the massing at the street wall, and it maintains visibility of the historic building's mansard clay tile roof. Overall, the design is well articulated. The garage's vertical piers and their notched corners are reflective of the design of the Beckons building. And the mix of narrow and wider structural bays is reflective of the design of the corner historic building. The building design features a white decorative block material with 3 different patterns that alternate along the building walls on the different elevations. The patterns include solid block, protruding blocks, and hit and miss design with openings scattered between the blocks. As it relates to public comments, staff received 1 comment letter. A copy's been provided to you. It'll also be kept on record. There are 3 primary concerns brought up in the letter. The first is related to the west face of the building being open to the neighbors, which allows noise and fumes to filter into the residential structures. The second comment has to do with space for a large vehicle to unload inventory. And the third comment is regarding the employee parking, if that is included with the parking structure. Staff is recommending approval of the project with 3 conditions related to providing landscape details, window details, and a lighting plan for our review and approval. That concludes my presentation. I'm available for any questions, and I believe the project architect is here as well.
Thank you for your
Thank you.
presentation. Do we have any questions for staff?
Super.
Okay. And Board Member Chagoyan, no questions?
No question.
Okay, great.
I had a question. In
Okay,
the
great.
comment or the email that they sent, it was asking if employee parking was also included in the structure. I just wanted to see if we could address that question, or if they wanted to come up later and bring that up. I don't know if you know.
I'll defer to the applicant
Okay.
from a zoning perspective. The state recently passed a law, AB 2097. We cannot require parking for many commercial and multifamily projects. This project qualifies and applied for that exception. So it's not necessarily something we can require them to do. My understanding is that the space that is there now, that surface lot, is vehicle inventory, so if whatever employee parking they have is not going to be taken away. But again, I'll defer to the applicant and their team.
Perfect. Thank you for that.
I was just wondering one thing. Can you elaborate a little bit on the window detailing requirement that you're requesting?
Sure. It's just to get some documentation about what the intent for those windows are. Looking at them, they look like fixed glass, and that they're going to have some definition and be recessed in the wall. It's just not clear on the drawings with the details, so just to make sure we get that addressed for plan check. That's all.
Okay. And also, in terms of the lighting plan, just providing one.
Ideally, there's going to be lighting on the interior, but then the stairwells too, just kind of understanding what that's going to be, and then trying to minimize any visual impacts, which we can deal with at the staff level.
Okay, great. Thank you. Thank you. Okay, and then are there any other questions? Well, then we'll open the public portion of the hearing at this time, and I'll call forward the owner of the project, if you could come forward. If you want to talk now, or would you prefer the architect to speak first? Okay, great. Mr. Plant, can you please come forward and state your name?
Hi, my name is Robert Plant. I'm a project architect for Roar Architects. Been practicing architecture since 1980. I've done over 20 high-rise office buildings. I'm very familiar with glass and how to work. Did one in Glendale in 1982. Worked for the firm of Skidmore, Owings and Merrill. Worked across the United States doing a lot of big high-rises. With that, when you're doing high-rises as a young architect, I did a lot of parking structures. This particular project is not a parking structure. It's a warehouse. They're different as a car and a truck. The main difference with a parking structure and this particular building is in a parking structure, they're typically with an office building or at a retail mall, and the cars are coming and going all day long. You have to lay out the parking in the parking structure such that it's very easy to manipulate a car out for the average driver. This particular building, the cars will be moving, they're saying, about every 30 days. They're literally just parked there waiting for a customer to buy one at their lot, at their facility down the street, and then they'll fill that up in the middle of the evening or early in the morning when those cars leave. That's typically what's done. Another key point about this project is when they were at the height of car sales pre-COVID, they were working off 9 lots in the city. So all day long, staff and people are running all around town. This eliminates a lot of that. Now they've got the main facility, 2 lots behind them, and this. That'll help cut down a lot of the nuisance city traffic that they were generating prior. So I think that's another big plus. The other interesting thing I didn't realize is 50% of their inventory is electric. In 2 years to 3 years, 70% will be electric. It's going to take us 2.5 years to get our permits and to build a structure. So by the time the structure's occupied, it's going to be almost all electric cars. Another question that came up was employee parking. Employee parking behind the body shop is where the staff of the body shop park, and there's roughly 29 employees. We can fit 30 parking spaces there. Also, there's 2 gentlemen that work. They do what's called recon. The used cars that they trade for a new car, they refurbish those in those bays at the back, and there's 2 guys there. They park right in front of where they're working. So within the structure itself, there really won't be any customer cars. We'll park at a much higher density. Your parking, typically you're looking at 280 square feet per car. We're looking at 220 to 212 because we just pack them in, and we're using professional drivers to move them in so that we can get big inventories in there. I've been a specialist in car dealerships for the last 22 years, and it's all about inventory. I was a facility architect for Galpin for 17 years, and they kind of set that precedent. Everybody's now basically buying their car or locating their car online, and they come to you. So having a big inventory is really key. That's the purpose of this building, is to really keep them functioning in the market. Other than that, any questions?
Thank you for your presentation. And do we have Board Member Welsh?
Yeah, I'd like for you to walk us through your thinking in terms of the design language that you've put forward here, how you thought about relating to the existing buildings and the existing context, and, if you have any also reaction to the comment letter that was received.
Yes, I've done 8 dealerships or remodeled 8 dealerships in your city. So very familiar with the area. Been working with this client since 2001. This particular building, this location, we looked to put Star Ford there a number of years ago, and we ended up moving Star Ford down the street and put them in that location where they currently are. The Packard building is very special. It's got amazing trusses inside. I fell in love with them. My home that I recently built has trusses that are similar. When we first did the inventory structure, we looked at kind of mimicking the one we had designed for Star Ford, which has not been built. It was approved. The owner was ready to move in to build it, and we came into the chip crisis, and everything kind of went on the table. This particular building, we came back, met with planning, who I knew most of the gentlemen in planning quite well, having worked with them for a number of years, and they wanted to see something a little bit different. So I looked at the Packard building, and I really liked the rich brick texture. So a typical inventory parking structure, usually they're precast concrete or they're poured-in-place concrete. We were looking at a poured-in-place concrete building, and I looked to take the brick from next door and integrate that into the panels. The brick is designed in a couple different ways. With any building, you have shear walls, and then you've got open area for fenestration so that you don't have to have tons of exhaust fans running all the time. The corners of the building where we have shear walls, that's where the panels are solid. And I looked at poking the bricks out, which is an old traditional, it was actually at my mom's up in Northern California. And there's this a couple of old brick buildings from the 1930s and 40s. And they had a fenestration where they're pushing the brick out. And when I got back, I'm like, oh, I'll try pushing the brick out just to make it a little bit different. There's a lot of history like that in Glendale. With regards to the areas where normally in an inventory or parking structure, the modern thing nowadays is we're hanging chain mesh over the openings. But the city didn't want to really see that, so I looked at basically creating mesh out of the brick by eliminating a lot of the brick. We've also looked at maybe using a different type of brick. There's a series of residences that were recently built over, well, a couple years now back, over in Marina del Rey, where they used a perforated brick for the parking structure. Well, it looks quite elegant. It's kind of almost got a 1960s oval punched through the brick. We might come back to the city planners and maybe suggest that versus the penetrations, but I still kind of, like what we've done. With regards to placing the brick in the building, I pushed the brick back to kind of mimic the Gothic low-rise building just to the south of it. We also, on top of our pilasters going up, we took them up higher. We could have just eliminated them at the deck, but we pulled them up much like the spires that go up on the Gothic building. With regards to the staircase, originally it was internal. It was requested when we were working with the planning department that we notch the building back to give a little more prominence to the Packard building, which is only one story, not to kind of be too much of a bigger brother to it. And so we pulled it back, and then we tried to come up with a kind of a creative staircase that kind of is very light and just kind of silhouettes itself down. Other than that, the ground floor, I always like, when somebody's walking along the street, I don't like that hard building edge coming down. So I opened up the ground floor so you literally look through it. And I think with the cars parked down there, it's also a great opportunity for the owner of the store to display some of their used cars that they purchase. One of the things that it's pretty traditional in car dealerships, if you're a BMW store, the front row is all full of, Lexuses and Porsches and Mercedes-Benz, because those are cars you took in on trade. They know you're a BMW store because it says BMW. So I was kind of thinking the same thing along the street on the bottom level, is that you could put in the Lexus or the Ford or the Chevy that you picked up in trade could be displayed there. And that's kind of trying to address your question. Did I miss any part of it, or?
Just about, I have a follow-up, but first, the comment letter about the noise infiltration from the rear, and is there any consideration that could be done there?
There would be an issue if it were a parking structure, because again, you've got cars coming and going. Normally, the only thing that's really going on there is you've got a couple of people every few days either spritzing or dusting the cars because they're just sitting there. Or they're occasionally moving a car around to charge it, because we will have a lot of chargers in the building. There'll probably be close to 45 chargers with the new codes that have come in. So they'll be, basically spotted all around. But there's very low traffic in these kind of buildings, especially in the upper levels. You're usually setting the vehicles up to where the models that sell quick, you put on the lower floors, and the models that sell slow, you put up on the roof. So there's going to, like most warehouse buildings, it's going to be a very quiet structure for the most part.
Okay, and Madam Chair, if I may, one follow-up question. The material, you keep calling these bricks at the facade there. Are they actually bricks? Are they intended to be concrete, or what is the material?
We're looking at a brick material.
A brick material, so some kind of a clay-based material?
Correct.
Okay, interesting. Okay, those are my questions.
Great, thank you very much. Appreciate your thoughtful comments. Okay, so can we please have the consultant, would you like to come forward and speak, or not at this time? Okay. And would the owner like to speak, or, okay, great. All right. And then I'll call forward Alan Durham. Welcome, Alan.
Thank you. Chair Lockreff, members of the board, I'm Alan Durham. I want to make it clear I'm not opposed to this project. Sales tax is the second largest revenue source for the city of Glendale, and the car dealerships along Brand are an important source of this revenue. I do have some comments about the design, particularly of the front facade along Brand Boulevard. With all due respect, I think it looks a bit massive and monolithic and particularly unbalanced. The square windows on the fourth floor could, like the Beacons building has windows, but they come down, and that's just a warehouse too. The square windows on the fourth floor could be repeated on the lower floors, floors 2 and 3. That would help break up the massing of these walls without much additional expense. I agree that the vertical piers are good in that they break up the facade into panels and reference the adjacent Beacons building. But unlike Beacons, they don't extend very far above the roof line, and they aren't articulated like they are on the Beacons building. I think they could be better articulated as a reference to better integrate with the surrounding neighborhood. And the block design patterns, I think, are out of scale with the mass of the building. I think a boulder pattern, larger blocks or boulder boulder pattern would be better suited to this building. I mean, think of examples like Frank Lloyd Wright's Hollyhock House or Ennis House. Those are fairly large, bold pattern blocks. Or the Broad Museum downtown in LA. I just think there could be more geometry going on with the facade and probably more perforation of the facade where the blocks are. Thank you.
Thank you for your comments. Okay, do we have any callers?
No callers at this time.
Okay. And we received a comment letter as well, so, but, okay, great. Does the architect want to respond to any of the comments made? Okay, great, thank you. And then if no one else wants to speak from the owner's side, we'll close the public portion of the hearing and open it up for deliberation. Would anyone like to start?
Okay, I'll start. Generally speaking, I'm in favor of this. I think that the design is thoughtfully done in relation to both of the historical buildings that are nearby. It's kind of a bridge, as it were, between them. The echoing of the spacing of the facade piers from, I'm not sure what you called it exactly, but the one at the corner there at Garfield, as well as the vertical pier elements from the Beacons building. So there's definitely some echoes of those that is rendered in a modern context, but respectful towards that. So I think from that perspective, I think that you've done a good job. I think that the comment from the member of the public about the massiveness of it, I think is well placed, and I think that's the comment about the windows. It was curious to me how we had just windows on the fourth floor, and that they weren't repeated down. So I think that it might be worth considering asking them to add them on all of the floors. I mean, I get it that it creates a sort of a tripartite look, where you have the ground floor one way, a middle section, and the upper section. That is evocative of how the Beacons building is set up. But nevertheless, I think that it could be, it could help lessen the massiveness of it. The other thing that I was considering is the material of the blocks. I like what you've done with that differentiation, the pop-outs, the voided areas, but it's just a lot of concrete. It appeared to me to be concrete. So if you're saying it's a different material that maybe will represent itself better in person, I think that would be fine. I was even going to suggest that you consider alternate materials. It could be, like you mentioned, a brick material that's sort of a different kind of a pattern, or even like something like a hempcrete or something, a more modern kind of environmentally positive source. But I'm curious to hear what other people think about those thoughts and what we might do. I wanted to do something that would break up the pure, straight, smooth concrete element of it more than is already represented here a little bit. But beyond that, I think that I'm in favor of the project. I think staff's conditions are appropriate, lighting plan is necessary, especially on the roof where, you can have, if you don't have properly shielded lights, it can be very invasive. And doing what you can to have landscaping, but, the notion of having the ground floor open, I think, is appropriate. I walk by this site all the time. I live in South Glendale, so I walk this area, and I love wandering into the car lots, looking at the cars. I'm one of those looky-loos, so I'm a car guy, so I love looking at that. So I appreciate keeping it open, and being able to allow the public to wander in, look at the cars. In particular, that Saab that you've got in that, the body shop on the corner, I love it. So those are my comments. I'm curious to hear what other people feel about it, but otherwise, I'm generally, in favor of moving forward. Thank you.
Thank you. Board Member Kaskanian?
Thank you, Madam Chair. Thank you all so much for coming out. I know you guys are, one of our beacons of dealerships within the city, so thank you all. It's good to see you all are also expanding and building this parking lot. Overall, I am in support of this project. I think you've done a great job with the design. I do like the bricks that are, coming out. I think that makes it look really nice. I personally do appreciate the design of it. I do echo with the windows, though. I think that we could see a little bit more windows, as we heard from our public comments as well. So I am in support of that. But overall, I think, and thank you for your comments in regards to, the transition to electric cars. I've actually lived on Central next to a parking lot, so I understand the frustration that the resident could potentially have with, a car alarm going off or something along those lines. It's something that was annoying me whenever I lived over there, but as you stated, this is more of like a warehouse, something where, the cars are going to be stored, not really moving in and out. So thank you for that comment. But hopefully there is someone that is going to be keeping an eye to ensure that, we don't have noise that comes out late at night or something along those lines. But overall, I am in support of this project, and I do agree that, seeing a little bit more window other than just like the top is something I think would be good. Thank you.
Thank you.
Yes, thank you. I agree with my fellow board members. I am in support of the project, but I do appreciate that you put a lot of thought into the design language and considering the context and the building on the corner. So I definitely see that with the columns and everything you described. The one area was the windows. I was having a hard time, and you didn't really talk about that either, so I felt like it wasn't as thought through as everything else potentially. So I would agree with my fellow board members about the windows. Maybe it's not even glass, like maybe it's just openings in the wall, because there's also a very stark contrast from what we're seeing on the street versus what the neighbors are seeing on the other side. And while I appreciate that it's just a warehouse for storing cars, I think if it's not a huge, impact to the project or the building, why not sort of mimic that same design language that you have on the front towards the back, instead of just keeping it a lot less defined and a lot less designed, right? It's just cable rails. I agree with the comment from the public where the scale of the brick seems off because of the massing of it. I appreciate the decorativeness of it, because it starts to read like too monolithic, and because it's such a light color as well, I think it's losing something in that regard. But I would also agree with the articulation at the top of the columns, especially with this rendering in the front where you're seeing it in relation to that building next to it. I think it could add to it. But I appreciate the openness at the bottom, and whatever amount of landscaping you can get down there is always appreciated. But all in all, in support of the project with sort of these added comments from all of us. Thank you.
Thank you. I also am supportive of the project. I think it's well done overall. I think that I'm in agreement regarding the windows, and I actually really like the idea of even eliminating the glass if it's not functional in some way for the dealership. I think just having an opening in that would and then not having that reflectiveness would help with the massing. Overall, I do appreciate how you've turned the bricks and the pattern that it creates. It's almost like a lace. I do like it, but it sounds like you were also considering some other options as well. So I don't know if that particular item would be a consideration for. I would just throw that out there for that particular line item. So then it leaves it a little more up to their discretion as to what that is. I think I appreciate your experience with the area and how you are really considering how it fits in. And let's see, I'm trying to think back to some of you were talking about. You brought up another item, removal of glass, and then the column articulation, and I agree with that. In what way, I don't know if it's more of a conversation, but what way were you thinking of articulating that?
I don't know. I mean, I agree that this building is a lot more modern versus the building next door, so I'm not saying copy paste, but I think like you're doing in the face of the column, you're kind of bringing it in and out. I think up top could use a little something as well to help stick with the language of the facade, but still give it a little more articulation.
Okay. All right.
I mean, as he stated, he didn't have to extend it up, and when he did, maybe instead of extending the full footprint, when you make it smaller, it'll help lighten it up as well.
Okay. And yeah, so overall, I support the project and also the conditions that staff has mentioned in terms of the lighting plan, the planting details, and window details. With perhaps we extend that particular. I don't know if you want to elaborate on conditions.
So just to be clear, so I think we're all in alignment that there should be added fenestration added on the second and third floor, whether it's glass or an opening. I don't care one way or the other. I think that we could leave that as an
Leave it
option
open,
for
right.
the applicant to decide.
Right.
But just the fenestration itself, the openings on all three floors, second, third, and fourth.
I wouldn't say so there's something really nice about what he's done at the base, where this bottom is a defined opening that mimics the historic buildings in the area. So I hate to take away from that and dictate that lower one needs to be included.
So
I
you're
guess.
saying just the third and the fourth?
Correct, just the upper two.
I would agree with that.
Yeah.
Okay. And then there was some various discussions about some of the blocks. I'm not sure if we did reach a consensus out there, but I would propose that we add a condition that says for the applicant to restudy the use of the blocks, potentially considering larger block shapes, maybe different textures, maybe different materials, to work with staff on considering those things, and kind of just leave it up to them, to the applicant, to work with staff
Not
on
to
coming
define
up
it,
with.
right.
Yeah, to not prescribe it overly, but to have them just rework it a little bit, maybe come up with some different options. And I think our goal here is really just to provide a little bit less of a feeling of massiveness, a little bit more airiness, or just a little bit more interest.
More
you know?
definition.
Definition,
Right.
interest, something that helps break it all up, so it doesn't just appear like a bunch of concrete block. So I think that's how I would sort of phrase a condition on that regard. Does that make sense?
Yes.
And then lastly, we talked about the rear.
Yes, and I don't know if you guys agree or not, or how you feel about it, or if it doesn't, that's fine. It could be a consideration.
I think, we can make it a consideration, but from a cost perspective, I think it would add a lot to the cost of a structure like this, to do something like that. So I think
Yeah.
that's, if they could, have a consideration to do a repeat of that, or to do other elements that will help
Bring in some
mitigate
elements.
the noise level, potential
Right,
noise,
right.
so.
Yep.
I would
So
agree with that.
consideration.
Yeah.
Yep.
Okay, for the Windows, so we're saying mimic the fenestration pattern on the third and from the fourth floor onto the third floor. And a consideration can be given to removing the glass and just having openings. And is it just this Brand Boulevard facade or the facade facing the,
Beacons building.
Yeah.
Yeah, I think that
It
should.
needs to be both.
It needs to be both, yeah.
okay, so both
Right.
facades. And then, I don't believe there's windows on the facade facing north.
Yeah, I don't think so
I
either.
don't think there is, so, yeah, okay.
And to be clear, it doesn't need to be just like copying the same windows down. I think it's important,
Okay.
yeah, to consider proportion. That,
Well, I would think that they should be the same. I think that if you look at the Beacons building, it's,
It
there's
is very
consistency
mimic.
there. So I
There
would think that
is-
if we're trying to be responsive to that, it should be essentially the same.
I see.
Okay.
And so then finally, I think the issue of the columns, the pilasters there, do we want to do something about that?
So actually his elevations show that there's like a sort of
There is a
a
top
cap
too.
to it, but the renderings I think don't, and that's where I was losing,
Okay,
it was a
So
disconnect.
we're
yeah.
okay with just leaving that alone?
Yeah,
yes.
assuming the elevations are accurate compared to the
I
rendering.
believe so. I believe the elevations would be the more accurate
Yeah.
depiction.
Okay.
Okay,
So then we don't need to worry about a condition for the column articulation towards the top.
I mean, I guess you can leave it in there to ensure it occurs.
That
And
it
it's not
matches
just
the
an assumption,
elevations
right?
rather than the renderings?
yeah.
Sure.
Maybe reference the elevations in the condition.
Okay, that'll be a condition. For the condition for the blocks, so restudy the use of the blocks, potentially considering larger blocks, is what I
Not
understand.
necessarily larger, but a pattern that provides
alternate shapes.
more definition.
Which could be
Yeah,
larger.
could be
Right.
larger.
But we want to
could be a
leave it,
different
we want to
texture, you know.
leave it to the designer, right?
So restudy use of blocks, potentially considering a pattern with more definition and alternating shapes. Is that good for the language? Okay.
Correct.
Yeah.
And
Again,
then
the goal, I think, is that it just minimizes the impact, the visual mass impact.
Okay, and then for the consideration, essentially mimic the design language from the brand-facing facade on the west and south facades. That's a consideration.
Consideration,
Right.
correct.
Okay. Okay. We will need two motions, one for the environmental review, and then one for the, just decision to approve the project.
Okay, do we have a
So-
motion?
I'll move to adopt the mitigating negative declaration.
Okay, and can I have a second?
I'll second.
Board Member Kaskanian,
Yes?
Simonian is absent, Board Member Chagayan,
Yes?
Board Member Welch.
Yes.
And Chair Lockeroff.
Yes.
Okay, and then can I have a motion to approve the project with conditions and the consideration?
I'll move to approve the project.
Okay, can I have a second?
Second?
Okay, Board Member Kaskanian,
Yes.
Board Member Chagayan,
Yes?
Board Member Welch.
Yes.
And Chair Lockeroff.
Yes.
Awesome, thank you.
Okay, thank you.
Thank you. Good luck.
Yeah, good luck,
And so that
congratulations.
concludes that item. Next on the agenda is,
Move to adjourn?
yep, we don't have any department updates, so move to adjourn.
Second that.
All right, thank you.
Thank you. Good night.